ZENO was a fairly rich trader living in Cyprus about 300 BC. His boat sank along with all of his load on a voyage from Phoenicia to Piraeus. That one incident, one that was totally out of ZENO's or anyone's control, led to this very rich man quickly became bankrupt. If you were ZENO, imagine how you would respond if the very force of nature drained the work of your entire life down the drain. Correct response. Would you find yourself enraged, unfortunate? Would you say that life has betrayed you? For most of us, these would all be natural responses. However, for ZENO, the father of Stoicism, they would not be. One little shift lasts an eternity. One little mental reinterpretation can lead to more significant modifications down the road. The fundamental definition of acceptance and indifference defines Stoicism from its inception. ZENO developed and instructed Stoicism after reading the writings of Socrates and other eminent intellectuals. ZENO claims that although we have little influence over what happens to us, we do have control over how it affects us and need to make excellent use of this ability. ZENO concentrated on keeping his cool about the circumstances, being calm and neutral despite his situation, instead of wailing over spilled milk, or in this case, drowned products. Those today unintentionally see Stoics as those who cannot be broken, those who do not often linger to the emotional extremes, going through events like fits of fury or worry. But the fundamental concept underlying Stoicism was far more than that. Stoicism was a technique to see, explain, and understand the universe, not only a means of characterizing those who lack emotional response. That was the way of life. It has endured for millennia. In the same way that it was used thousands of years ago, Stoic philosophy may be applied to modern events and have equally great effects. Stoicism helps us organize these unpleasant feelings from bad events into ideas that provide a different view of the world. Everyone in the world has unique experiences and so views things differently. Perspective is crucial. The overall philosophy of the Stoics was well known as they gathered, debated, and taught philosophy in public venues. They thought that everyone might substantially profit from Stoic ideas. Hence, it made no sense for them to keep that information within the four walls of a castle or a school. Everyone from slaves to emperors could learn and develop into Stoics, and they did. Among the most famous Stoic leaders in the world are Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, Epictetus, who translates as acquired because he was formerly owned as a slave, and Seneca, a well-known statesman. Early Stoics led the struggle against inequality and avoided all kinds of segregation, living what they preached. They even created the term cosmopolitan, which essentially denotes citizen of the world. Now, when people hear that word, we picture places like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London because of their diversity. This is the kind of cooperation and harmony the Stoics advocated. Women were not permitted to pursue philosophy during the time of the creation of Stoicism, but Stoics disagreed with that entirely. It is not males alone who possess enthusiasm and a natural tendency towards virtue, Epictetus's tutor Musonius Rufus once remarked. Women also. Women reject the reverse of such deeds, as they are happy no less than men by good and just deeds. Given this, why is it fitting for males to look for and analyze how they may lead fulfilling lives, that is, to practice philosophy, but not women? Women were allowed to freely study Stoicism and grow Stoic themselves, even during a period when it was not popular. Thus, why do so many people choose Stoicism as their way of life? In a world full of unanticipated paths of events, our emotions can interfere with reality. We get sad because unexpected negative events happen to us. We do not get depressed because good things do happen to us. One excellent thing is rain. It maintains cool and humid weather, supplies water for cattle, and helps to irrigate our vegetation. It's never a pleasant experience when that dark cloud catches you outdoors without an umbrella. Why do we not start to cry as soon as it rains? It's because, although the circumstances are horrible, we have learned to expect rain. Though it stinks, The rain passes and the light returns. It is inevitable and beyond human control over the weather. Stoicism teaches us that, in the same manner, we should expect that anything negative that can happen will happen. Imagine the worst and then relax, knowing it may occur. Aimed at boosting emotions of gratitude, one of the Stoic exercises is called voluntary discomfort. Eat nothing but potatoes for a few days. Sleep on the floor of your kitchen. Take cold showers when you usually take hot ones. Do things like this. This practice helps you realize that, with the correct attitude, you will still survive and maybe flourish regardless of how hard it gets. Being able to survive these trying circumstances helps us indirectly equip our minds for the next tragedies. This message is more relevant now than ever, since we are made to believe that if we lack the next best thing, look a certain way, or make a certain amount of money, we will never be happy. Ads are constantly shoved down our throats. We arrive on Earth knowing nothing at all. We learn things at home, in the classroom, and by personally seeing the world. The truth is, at times, each of these three knowledge sources guides us in unique ways. Do we have to absorb all of this information then? If we do, we could be unintentionally creating unattainable standards for our lives, which would finally leave us frustrated and dissatisfied. That is not the way one should live. Instead, we ought to concentrate on bettering ourselves personally. We should act just for that purpose, for ourselves. Almost invariably, attaching any outside hope or secondary attachments to our activities results in disappointment. Usually, we find ourselves seeking outside objects to fill that need, spending all your money on a luxury house, a car, or even beginning a family. Sometimes we do all of these activities for their outward appeal rather than their intrinsic worth. But Stoicism teaches that if you approach life this way, you surrender your happiness to outside forces, forces that are always subject to failure. Almost always breaking down are cars. Natural disasters destroy whole cities. Divorce rates rise annually. Still, even the free things in life cost something. The expense of space is psychological as well as physical. Learning to live with less will make room in your life for the things that are important to you, as Seneca once said. Rather, we have to base our satisfaction on our intrinsic value as people and on nothing we can physically get. Whatever life presents, we have to decide to do our best to have a cool head. Though we have all the control over how we respond to most events that come our way, ultimately we have no control over most things that happen to us, regardless of what we desire. The most fundamental idea in Stoic philosophy is the paradox of control. Epictetus said, "The chief task in life is simply this, to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I control." According to Stoics, we have to learn to differentiate our controllable from our uncontrollable actions. We must ascertain our value from the things we can control, rather than from those outside our reach. While aiming for goals is admirable, from a Stoic perspective, breaking down when those things don't go your way is futile. Although creating YouTube videos is much simpler than ruling as a Roman emperor, it can still be difficult at times. Before you hit upload, first you have to form your idea, which takes years, then research that idea, discard it because it stinks. Start over, script the video, construct the video, edit it, make the thumbnail, title, and everything else. Everything up until the point of upload is entirely yours. But the power moves to the YouTube algorithm once you hit the upload button. Still, many individuals evaluate the performance of their YouTube channel or Instagram account based on the number of views and subscribers or followers they have, measures of which most of the time are outside their reach. Stoics advise that instead of basing your assessment of the success of your work on the result of your external hopes, you should consider the effort you have put in. Put your faith in the procedure. Living with less means releasing yourself from the social restraints you have placed on yourself. Consider someone who has been diligently working at their job for the past 6 months. Now he feels he should be promoted. Hence, he approaches his manager with his performance report. The manager thanks him, denies him a promotion, and tells him to go home, believing he has to suck at his job. He ignores the possibility that the manager might have simply woken up enraged. Someone else might have been more qualified at that time, or perhaps the business was simply losing money and just couldn't afford it. Though he doesn't know the cause, he is nonetheless offended. He could have been a lot happier generally if he had only valued the caliber of the performance report he gave in and continued doing what he was doing to get the promotion he sought. From the correct vantage point, his objective would have been postponed rather than lessened. Crucially, this is a reshaping of your perspective. Though they can live a decent life without all the luxuries money can buy, a real Stoic sees their triumphs based on the financial benefit of their endeavors as unsatisfactory. Wisdom, bravery, moderation, and justice comprise the 4 primary Stoic virtues. Wisdom is the capacity to distinguish between what is internal and what is outside, as well as the capacity to decide how we respond to events that pass through our lives. Between stimulus and response, Viktor Frankl stated, there is a space. That space is our power to decide how we react. 2 words, persist and resist. Courage. I just accomplished here, doing more with less, talking more with fewer words. Temperance. That is, moderation. While Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are battling at the top of Forbes' list, Stoics hold that the limit of riches should only be having what is necessary, then having what is enough. Of all the values, justice is the most fundamental. It tells us that since we were all born for one another, to do good to one another, and not for ourselves, no one should injure another. Among the most well-known African leaders globally was Nelson Mandela. He lasted 27 years until being freed after being condemned to life imprisonment when he was opposing apartheid. Many believed he would harshly punish all those involved in apartheid or his incarceration when he was released from prison, but of course, he did not. He was elected president of South Africa instead, all of which he followed throughout his life. Mandela studied the writings of Marcus Aurelius and acquired many of the fundamental Stoic principles during his incarceration. Nelson Mandela advised his followers to pursue the contrary instead of demanding the heads of the wrongdoers, to rest and rebuild. He underlined that the past was now beyond their grasp and that their only option was to find a way forward and create a better country. This is the Stoic approach. Stoicism is fundamental in contemporary medicine for treatments including logotherapy and rational emotional behavioral therapy. Reversing negative thought patterns that can generate emotional and behavioral problems helps patients. When you understand that many of these negative ideas are baseless, you can then replace them with more constructive and healthy ideas. It lets you question the logic underlying all these bad ideas using reason. Conversely, logotherapy is predicated on the Stoic theory that people are motivated by goals. Just knowing that goal will help us make our lives meaningful and joyful, even in the worst of circumstances. As many of us are aware, though, this is more difficult than saying. Like everything else, it is a process. We have to reorganize our thinking, out with the past, in with the future. We have to learn self-worth if we want to solve our issues with happiness. Redirecting our concept of value to the things we can influence helps us avoid obsessing over the things we cannot control and generally leads to a much better and more contented life. Stoicism guides us across past and present storms into more tranquil waters. And even if our ship falls and we all drown, we can find comfort in the knowledge that we had decent lives, albeit not as long as we had wanted. Remember, everything has an ending.